What happened to special? Oh no.
Okay. We got parasitic fungi.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whoa. All right. So specifically, I'm going to be talking about Ophiocordyceps fungi, and these guys are entomopathogenic, which just means that they attack insects.
Oh.
Different species within the genus Ophiocordyceps parasitize different insects, and these are defined by their thick-walled asci and non-disarticulating spores, which just means an asci is like a sac, where an asci is a sac where they like produce spores, I guess. And how fungi spread is a lot of the spores disarticulate into half spores just to get like a wider coverage of area. But these guys do not disarticulate because they infect insects.
Woo!
Me too.
All right, so the first one up is the zombie ant fungus, aka Ophiocordyceps unilateralis. These are primarily found in tropical forests around the world. You can see over here, actually, they're mainly native to South America, Southeast Asia, and there are some variants in North America as well, and Japan. They are characterized by the reproductive structure on their dead host because they have a long sort of extension that we'll get into later. So yeah. So these are the victims of zombie ant fungi. They are the carpenter ants. So ants operate by a network of pheromones, which are sort of like chemicals that allow ants to communicate with each other. So carpenter ants are the specific ants that are infected. They live in the canopies of tropical forests, but they have to go to the ground to forage for food. And they primarily eat, I think it's just leaf litter and some sort of like a bug thing. And anyways, while they're on the ground, they are exposed to the spores because the spores are being carried by wind currents to the ground, and if they touch a spore, it gets really bad for them.
Oh, no.
Wait, excuse me.
Yes.
What? Okay, so ant colonies are a thing in the dirt. What happens in the leaves?
Ah,
Do
yes.
they just like hang
So
out?
these dudes live in trees.
Yes.
Yes.
But
So
like in the trees?
I think so. I think
Okay.
they make nests in the trees.
Okay.
Yes.
Like inside of them?
Inside of them, in the
Got it.
wood. All right.
A lot of times what they'll do is, especially with like swollen thorn acacia trees, they'll bore a hole and they'll live inside of that hollow thorn.
Alright.
But the
Yeah.
thorns are huge, right? They're like that big around. So they can get a whole kind of little colony in there.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
The cool
Not saying that's how
part.
they do
All
it.
right, we got the cool part.
Woo!
So let's say you're an ant and you've got a spore on you. That spore is using enzymatic reactions to penetrate your exoskeleton. And
Ew.
basically, what that is it's got like a sort of a hypha, and a hypha is just like a filament of mycelium. So fungi are kind of like primarily made of mycelium. They're like the little strands between its structure. So one hypha is releasing a special substance that has enzymes in it that kind of like dissolve the ant's exoskeleton so that more hyphae can get into the ant's internal organs. So a matrix of hyphal strands develop around the internal organs for nutrition. Mycelium eventually replaces up to half of the ant's total tissue. So the ant is kind of being dissolved from inside and is getting replaced by fungus. And cool thing about this is that the ants know if another ant is infected. So if an ant's like behaving weirdly, or they sense mycelium just growing all over it, they'll take it as far away from the colony as possible. So that's pretty cool. All right, cool part two.
I have a question.
What?
Abby first.
Okay. What if, like, do you think it would be possible with your expertise and knowledge, okay, that we take this fungi and we try to scientifically create a zombie fungi for us?
How powerful is zombie apocalypse?
Yeah, I'll get into that later, actually. We'll
Okay.
talk about the zoonotics.
Okay.
What?
This is 2 questions. Answer whichever combination you can. The first, what is like acting weird? Like having all this mycelium in an ant, what does it do differently? Is it just like slow and inhibited, or does it like do something different? Or I don't know.
That's the first question, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think the mycelium primarily interferes with the ant circulatory system, so it's going to block off a bunch of like hormones that the central nervous system is usually sending for the ants for like normal behavior. But also it's going through a bunch of convulsions and like seizure-like symptoms. So
So that's how the other ants know.
yeah, if you're convulsing, you're infected.
Second thing.
Second thing.
Is it like infectious? So like while the ants are excommunicating their fellow infected zombie man,
Yes.
not man but ant,
Mm.
are they in any danger? Or is it just like
I would
Like, wear
assume not
masks.
unless they get exposed to another spore, because the spore is already germinated
They
inside.
don't need
them.
masks.
Yes.
Lower chances on
What?
apocalypse.
How exactly do they excommunicate it? Like, do they just scoop
Yeah,
it
they
up and
just
drag it
they
away?
just carry it like they have got like 5 worker ants to just pick it up and just take it out.
does it try and come back? Do they have to like
I don't think it.
okay.
I don't think so. I don't know though.
Maybe
Maybe.
it's too busy convulsing.
Maybe. I think we'll get into this on later slides as well. Cool part 2. So like I said in my answer, fungus manipulates the circulatory system of the ant. Once the hyphal matrix, which is like the stuff growing inside the ant, reaches the central nervous system of the ant, it stimulates the release of relaxant neurotransmitters, which basically means it's getting the ant high.
Wow.
The ant is then forced to move to an elevated area on a tree, and this is so that it can get the widest coverage of spores when that reproductive structure inevitably comes out of the base of its head.
And apparently so it can get higher.
Yes.
Oh.
That's good. Wow.
You know why?
So the ant, which
It's a
is now basically
parasitic
being
fungi.
yeah.
No, you can go get it. It's a parasitic fungi, so that's why he's getting high.
I do
yeah.
actually get that one.
You gotta edit this part out of the video.
I'm not doing it.
Okay, anyways, the ant, which is now controlled by the fungus, is primarily looking for like a humid location and just like the right conditions for the maximum growth rate of the fungus. And once it's there, it makes the ant clamp down on a leaf with its mandibles. It's called the death grip because it's literally using abnormal amounts of force just to clamp down on this leaf. And then the ant dies. The hyphal knot, which is just like a knot of mycelium, forms at the base of the skull and becomes a primordia, which then develops into a mushroom.
What's a primordial?
A primordia is just like a structure that a mushroom grows out of.
Oh.
Please tell me the answer is no. Has anyone tried to eat the mushrooms before?
We will get into that as well. All right. The mushroom then, because it's in a high location, it releases a bunch of spores that spread with a wide range of coverage due to location, and the entire cycle repeats with another ant getting exposed to another spore.
Great.
Is this exponential or is it just like pretty stagnant? Like
It really depends on the ant population density, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. We got a nasty video.
Oh, yeah.
Love
Oh.
videos.
Dude, this is gonna be copyrighted.
A bit loud.
Don't want to scare you a little bit, Johnny.
Just the right amount of light,
Whoa.
just the right amount of humidity for the parasite growing inside. It forces her to clamp down in a death bite, and cordyceps reveals its gruesome nature.
What?
After 3 weeks of growth, cordyceps can release its own spores.
Yeah.
That is
So,
so
like,
dramatic.
That was good. That was
So those like bulby things on that little stick that came out of its head were the asci.
did the
Oh.
ant get hurt in the making of that production?
very much
Yes,
so.
I think it dies.
Answer.
Okay, environmental impact of the fungus. So it is obviously a significant limiting factor on the populations of carpenter ants, which can be good for tropical forests because they can be bad for the health of the trees.
True.
Prevents overharvesting of trees by carpenter ants. Potentially more biodiverse than presently categorized. What I mean to say by that is that there's been, like recently actually, the Ophiocordyceps unilateralis has been divided into 4 further species because of like the different, I guess the different sorts of carpenter ants they target and like the different growths. So yeah. Not zoonotic yet, which means it can't spread to humans, and
Darn.
you guys should watch The Last of Us. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
And then it's not endangered or at risk because they don't eat these. But we'll get to one. We'll get to a more delicious one.
Oh.
Delicious. All right, this is the caterpillar fungus, also known as Ophiocordyceps sinensis. What the heck? Ophiocordyceps sinensis. Can I like mute? Thank you. All right, and it's native to Tibet and the Himalayan plateau, as you can see here. Thrives in temperatures between 5 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So this is actually a fungus that can survive in very cold environments. It's primarily composed of a sclerotium, which stores food, and a stroma, which is the reproductive sort of extension over here. All right, and these are the victims. We've got ghost moth caterpillars. So how ghost moth mothers kind of like spread their brethren are they fly through the air and they release a bunch of eggs, and then these larvae hatch from these eggs and burrow underground, usually 15 centimeters underground. They feed on leaf litter, fungi, and other vegetation under the ground still, and yeah, that's what they do. Okay, cool part 31. So they go through like a sort of a cycle as they're transforming into moths. So they shed their skin in late summer usually, and this makes them very vulnerable to spores from this fungus because they don't have that sort of protective layering anymore. These spores, once they're in contact with the caterpillars, actually use the chemicals on the caterpillar's skin to release fungal mycelia into the caterpillar.
Okay.
And then temperature affects the rate at which the fungus grows. So generally, I think the colder the better, which is interesting. Okay, so once these caterpillars are infected, they position themselves upright so that their head is facing upwards. So they're like vertical underground. And the production of sclerota, which is the food-containing stuff inside their bodies, actually makes their bodies really stiff. So they're just standing there. In the spring, after the winter, in the spring, the fungus ruptures the caterpillar head and sends a stroma upwards. So it like kind of emerges through the soil. As you can see here, the stroma emerges and begins to spread spores.
What if you touch it?
We'll get to that as well.
Okay.
All right, environmental impact. These are a vulnerable species because they are used in Chinese medicine, actually.
Oh, okay.
They're actually really, really expensive. They're known as the Viagra of the Himalayas because they are traditionally known as aphrodisiacs, which means they make you horny. They are also currently negatively impacted by climate change, warming temperatures, which makes it harder to grow, and also acts as a limiting factor on the populations of ghost moths.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Very.
Would you eat that?
Yeah, so, oh my god.
Yes. Question.
Could you pronounce Himalayas for me again?
Himalayas?
Cancer.
Himalayas?
Sorry.
Yeah, that's how you said it.
All right, other examples, we've got wasp fungus, aka O. Sphecocephala. And these are native in Asia and in the Americas. Behave similarly to O. unilateralis in that it makes the wasp climb up to a high place and then comes out of the back of its head. Might have some medicinal properties for treating cancer, but that has no scientific evidence.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
We got
So
the
you're
all.
lying.
So they're just lying.
I'm just presenting a viewpoint.
Okay.
We've got all fly fungus, aka Ocoinomia. These parasitize the larvae of all flies. And stink bug fungus, which is actually pretty cool because these are found in Korea and they're actually used by farmers to control the population of the stink bugs because they're bad for agriculture.
Yay, that's cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And there's
So, as you can see, wasp, this is an all fly. I couldn't find a mushroom growing out of it. And then this is a stink bug thing. It's actually way longer than the stink bug, which is pretty cool. All right, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah!
What?
What happens if you eat the mushroom?
You get horny.
Who's eating the ant?
Actually, indigestion probably, and you might get really sick. What?
This is not an MLA format as we're excited.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We don't do that here.
All right, thank you.
I'm disappointed.